Okay.
Well, the world is ultimately run by mind control. It is much more difficult for controlling class of elitists or a ruling class to physically control people. So they'd rather not do it through that methodology. They would rather not have overt control. They would rather maintain covert control, whereby the cattle that they own as slaves essentially police themselves because they believe their rulers have a right to rule. They've been convinced in some sort of a Stockholm syndrome type of way that the average person actually has a moral obligation to obey the commands of this ruling class. And that's what ultimately dark occultism is. The dark occult is there to manipulate people into not knowing themselves to such an extent that they actually don't recognize their own sovereignty, and they actually believe that someone else possesses, as an individual or a group, the right to rule over them and arbitrarily decide what they may or may not do as individuals. And that's the ultimate form of control. The ultimate form of control is when a people who are actually being oppressed believe that their oppressors possess the right to continue to oppress them and hold them in a state of duress and violence and ultimately slavery. And that's where the human race is. That's exactly where the human race is at right now because of their absolutely false, incorrect, erroneous, and religious belief system called authority and government. And when you say this to people, they look at you like you have three heads instead of them being absolutely ill, sick, and religiously diseased as they are, because they haven't made the fundamental realization. They haven't awakened to such an extent that they have yet made the fundamental realization that there is no such thing as the moral legitimacy of authority or a ruling class or of government. And they certainly have not made the realization that the belief in such things is a religion. It constitutes a religious belief, because what ultimately a false religion is a belief in something that is not true in the natural world, in the realm of nature, in the realm of reality, the real, the actual, the inherent to the universe. You are believing in something that isn't actually part of reality in a completely rigid way, which you refuse to let go of, regardless of how much information to the contrary reaches your eyes and ears. And I would say that even for those of us who may have studied the Bible biblically, we've looked into the allegories of different religions, etc., that this constitutes really the ultimate sin of almost every religion of the world. Believing in something that isn't true and refusing to accept what is true is the ultimate wrongdoing that any group of beings can ever conduct in the natural world. And this is refusal of truth. And that's where humanity stands. I've been thinking about this concept a lot lately because I think humanity is actually reaching a tipping point or a threshold where things are going to start accelerating in the negative direction very quickly, because we have, as a species, willfully refused truth. And to me, there's no greater quote unquote sin or wrongdoing than that, especially as an entire people, as an entire society, an entire population. I think back to some of the dark occult sacrifice rituals that this cult of the Black Sun has performed. Specifically, look at 9/11. 9/11, no one piece of the official story stands with any logic, any small amount of scrutiny and reason that any reasonably intelligent adult human being could possibly apply to it. Studying the basic simple mathematics or dynamics in physics of what we're told occurred on that day. Under any basic human scrutiny that any reasonably intelligent adult human being could possibly conduct, not one single solitary piece of the official story stands upon the other. And it's a complete and utter ridiculous amount of sheer nonsense. And yet the public is so, let's call it outright what it is. The public is absolutely so dumb, so ignorant, so completely willfully ignorant of basic mathematics and physics. They would flunk a 7th grade math class. That's how ignorant the average member of the human population is on a daily basis, that they still buy into and believe the utter nonsense that was told to us. It's literally like telling a kindergarten child a story they're so naive that they're just apt to believe, and you could just pull a fast one over on them because this is how utterly ignorant and naive they are. And that's where the general population is. And when we're in that level of ignorance and refusal, see, I want to bring this up as one of the main topics or the main concepts that I want to get across, not only to your listening audience, but mine and to listeners in the future. We have to understand that nature, the universe, God, if you will, however you want to look at it, the underlying intelligence to everything, will only tolerate so much refusal of reality. We're at a tipping point as a species where we have a choice whether we're going to accept the actual delineation and the actual difference between the real and the illusory, between what is actually inherent to creation and nature itself and exists inherently in the universe itself, and that which are outrageous, illusory, constructural ideas that have no basis in reality and therefore constitute complete falsehood and illusion. And religion, false religion, is what they constitute. The place that humanity is currently at, because of the manipulation of this dark priest class you are talking about, and that I'm explaining how they actually manipulate humanity into this state of ignorance, and we can get into specifically how they do it. We're at this point where we have, as a species, in the aggregate, not all of us, but the overwhelmingly vast majority of us as a species, has willfully looked truth in the eyes and raised our middle finger to it and told it to F off. That we want absolutely nothing to do with truth. We want absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with reality. We want our fantasy. We want our illusion. We want our comfort level. We do not want to engage in the realm of the real. We do not want to engage in the realm of truth. And when a species, when an entire collective species in the aggregate does that, that constitutes the ultimate sin against all of nature, against all of creation. Humanity, right now, as we speak, is in 100% active rebellion against God and creation. It doesn't matter to me whatsoever whether your listening audience is comfortable with that terminology or not. You can look at the concept of God however you want to look at it, about being the underlying creative intelligence that underlies everything in nature and gives rise to all the laws of nature, both the seen laws of the physical world and the unseen behavioral laws, which constitute the natural laws of behavioral consequence. We are, as a species, humanity is in 100% active rebellion against the laws of nature, against the laws of God, against creation itself. And when a species goes into that modality, it doesn't have long left to go, because nature invariably and unwaveringly will step in at some point, and it will do what needs to be done. And that's where this dark priest class that I refer to as the Dark Occult, simply, which I do not know about through secondhand accounts. I do not know about through reading about them through texts. I do not know about them through hearing about them through other people who were involved with them. I happen to know about them from first-hand experience of being an active member in some of their dark orders earlier in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, this is not a belief system to me. This is not a secondhand account or a collection of information that I've heard from others. I've been in their presence. I've worked with them. They were grooming me for further involvement in this dark cult. And this is a worldwide cult. And people have to understand it's not one group of people. It's not just the Freemasons or just the Jesuits or whatever other oversimplification of this dark occult network of mental sorcerers, because that's what they are. They constitute a network of sorcerers working mental sorcery. So you have to understand the dark occult priest class as very ancient master psychologists. This is what I try to explain, especially to listening audiences who may not be very familiar with my work. I try to explain this from the beginning in my work about what the occult really is and what this priest class network of dark occultists who are using this hidden knowledge about the human psyche and the laws of nature to their advantage at everyone else's expense. We have to look at them not as magicians as we would see in Hollywood. That's not the kind of sorcery or magic that I'm talking about here. I'm talking about being able to influence people's minds, not just at an individual level, but they can influence entire societies' minds. These are social engineers of the highest order, and they do this by understanding everything that there is to understand about the deepest recesses of human psychology. They go deep into the human psyche, and they understand all of our hidden motivations and fears. Once they know that, because there's such a knowledge differential, and the average person hasn't studied that for one split second in the course of their entire natural lives, they haven't looked at who they are, they haven't looked at what is deep inside their own psyche and their own subconscious psychological makeup. This priest class are the chess masters who have won every major chess tournament in the world year over year over year when it comes to the chess game of human psychology. And we're the novices. Humanity are the novices that don't even understand how the pieces move on the board. We haven't even shown up to sit down at the game of chess that's being played, and we've already had our ass kicked without even sitting down at the board because we know nothing about the nature of the game. And yet these are masters who know everything about every aspect of the game. And that knowledge differential is what they use to convert to a power differential in the world. They say knowledge is power, but it's not. Knowledge is potential. It's potentiality for anything you want to make of it, including power. But the differential in knowledge is always able to be converted to a differential in power. And that's where we're at because of human ignorance, overwhelming, colossal human ignorance of self and the laws of nature. The beings, the dark and psychotic and psychopathic beings, they don't even have a normal soul. They have a husk of a soul. And all they want to do is fill it with things and control. They want to control other people to make themselves feel somehow alive because they know that they're dead inside in their heart and in their soul. And this psychopathic class, this priest class of beings that is actively controlling and running our world, they are able to do this because the average population is completely ignorant, and they have this knowledge that has been hoarded within their family bloodlines and within their hierarchical network, the structure of this occult network, for tens of thousands of years. That's their birthright. They've been given all that knowledge and all that information about how to manipulate and deceive others because they know how their mind works, and yet the people they're actually manipulating don't know how their mind works. It is an absolute piece of cake. It is child's play for them to do what they're doing to steer entire societies in one direction or another at their whim. And the only thing that will ever be able to reverse that dynamic in our world is for the average human being and for society, the society of human beings as a whole in the aggregate, to incorporate the deep occult knowledge that this dark priest class has aggregated for themselves and kept to themselves for millennia. The occult and the knowledge that it contains has to be de-occulted out of this priest class by people who are defectors from it and people who truly study and learn what they have, because it is out there in the world. The problem is it is radically misunderstood, and people don't understand the importance of this knowledge or how it is being applied to deceive and manipulate people in the world and therefore to control them. And we have to take this knowledge into ourselves. This is the only solution to level the playing field, because once that knowledge differential gap is closed, then the power differential gap will begin to be closed by humanity. But not one moment until we narrow that knowledge differential. Without doing that, the dynamic of human slavery is going to remain exactly as it is today, and it's going to continue into the future, and it's going to get infinitely worse. And then nature at some point is going to step in because of our refusal to learn truth. You mentioned that my work has been very laborious and there's been a lot of